This is a video for the StoryCorps challenge for Temple Sinai. Before we start, tell us a little about yourself.
Well, my name is Phil West, Philip R. West, Philip Reed West, and I'm your father, Harrison West's father. And we're here to talk a little bit about my namesake, my grandfather on my mother's side, Philip Portnow.
Who is Philip Portnow?
Well, he was, as I said, my grandfather on my mother's side, and he came to this country from Russia. And he came around the turn of the century, and in researching him last year for the Similar StoryCorps project, we found out that he actually came to the United States with the big wave of immigrants that came that was depicted in the play Fiddler on the Roof. So he came from that part of Russia, the Pale they called it, which is now known, parts of it are in the Ukraine, and he came from the city of Odessa, which is in the southern part of the Ukraine on the northern coast of the Black Sea.
I know that you have brought a certificate. What is this?
Well, this is a very interesting certificate. I don't know how visible it is here. It's a certificate of naturalization of my grandfather, and it's a reflection of the computer there, so I'm not sure how well you could see that, but a month or two ago I was looking among some pictures that my mother gave to me before she died, and in among those pictures was this certificate of naturalization, which was the document that evidenced my grandfather, my namesake, becoming a citizen of the United States. It's dated June 25th, 1920, so it's 95, almost 100 years old now.
Why did your grandfather become a citizen of the United States of America?
Well, he became a citizen for the same reason many immigrants become citizens, because they want to feel like they're a part of the country. They want to feel connected. They want the rights of citizenship. And so I think the more interesting question is why he emigrated in the first place. And I think he emigrated in part because of the persecution that the Jews were suffering in Russia, again, as depicted in Fiddler on the Roof. There's a famous family story about Philip. Like other Jews of his age and generation, he was facing conscription into the Tsar's army in Russia. And for Jews who faced conscription, it was like a death sentence, because they were pushed to the front lines of the most violent battles, and the battles in which they were the most likely to get killed quickly. And so he knew that if he were drafted and served, he'd likely die, and so he tried to get away. And there's a famous family story about him hiding from the authorities who wanted to draft him, and hiding under a bridge. And they found him, and they got into a fight, and until the day he died, he had a scar on his back from that fight.
I know you didn't know him personally, but have you heard stories about what it was like to live with him?
I have heard those stories, and he was a very passionate man. He was in particular passionate about liberal politics. In fact, he'd be called a socialist today, maybe even a communist. We have Bernie Sanders running for president as a democratic socialist. Well, he'd be even further to the left of Bernie Sanders, I think. He was a very strong union man. He was a union member. He was a machinist and a tool and die maker, and he worked in a machine shop. In fact, as this certificate of naturalization says, when it asks for any identifying marks, he had, this says, top of left finger amputated. I actually think the top of two fingers were cut off in a machine shop accident. But that just shows how involved he was in his work, or maybe it shows something else, I don't know. They say At the end of his life, as he grew older, he, he must have had difficulties adjusting to life in this country because he started drinking. And I always wondered whether that machine shop accident in which his fingers were cut off, whether he was drinking at the time, and that's why he got into that situation.
What are your favorite stories you were told other than those that you've already mentioned?
Well,
About.
he was devoted to his children, and I know that. He was devoted to his wife, and they had a very close relationship. And we always heard about how much he loved his wife and how close they were. I remember hearing stories that when he would come home at the end of the day, they would, in those days, today we shower in the morning before we go to work. Then when you had jobs that were dirty jobs, you'd shower when you came home from work. And we always heard stories about he and my grandmother taking showers together at the end of the day. And he always said to his children, why would you go out? And why would you go out to dinner or go out to eat and buy food in a restaurant and spend all that money on food that wasn't as good as your mother could make? So he loved her cooking as well.
Well, it was nice talking with you.
Well, I hope that told you a little something about Philip
It did.
Portnow and his story of how he came to this country.
Goodbye.
Thank you.
Thank you.